Hey everyone, welcome back to Launch Codes Football. My name is Chris,
And I'm Chelsea.
and today we are going over the third week of the preseason. We are almost at the regular
Well,
season.
technically the second week.
Second week, technically, it depends. Some teams have already played their third game.
Technically, well, I suppose that's true.
So it's just we're almost there, Chelsea. We are right there at the
We're
season.
very close. It's very exciting. I don't even care who's on TV. Like, I just want to watch it. Like, it could be the Patriots. I want to watch it.
Fair enough. And that's
That's
coming
when you
from a
know.
Colts fan. So
Indeed. That's when
but
you know,
yeah,
man.
so let's get into the big breaking news today. Travis Etienne, the first round drafted running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, goes out with an injury today. According to Adam Schefter, he's got to have foot surgery, I believe, and he is pretty much done for the year. Yikes. And this is a big rip. Obviously, I hope he's okay. Rip for me because I picked him as one of my starting running backs for fantasy football. And I'm just like, every player I touch dies in some way. So, I also drafted Trevor Lawrence. Guess what's happening right now? He's not playing too hot in the preseason. Does the preseason matter? We'll get into that later. But, Chelsea, what are your thoughts on this big breaking news today?
So it came out, right? Bleacher Report, Twitter, ESPN, etc. And it came out, and I had two thoughts, right? My first thought was, that is terrible. This kid is like 22, just got drafted, was edging for a starting running back role on a really young and promising team. And then he gets injured in a preseason game, which I'm sure, the preseason haters are going to use this injury like they do with all the injuries to encourage preseason to go away, right? Which I don't agree with because the reality is that could happen in a regular season game as easily as it could happen in the preseason. And people need snaps. So, I mean, I think that they should keep the games. But that was my first thought. My first thought was prayers up for Travis Etienne because that sucks, dude. That is terrible. And I mean, I'm like the queen of foot injuries over here being a Colts fan. So I really sympathize with those Travis Etienne people because that is just terrible. My second thought was, guess who took James Robinson as a running back in their fantasy league? Me. So rip you, Wiles. You want to trade for him?
This hurts, okay, but it's fine. You know what?
Oh man.
This happens like all the time to me. I remember a few years ago I drafted Deshaun Watson back in his rookie year, and then he was playing really well, and then there was that practice where he ripped his ACL, and I was using Deshaun Watson as kind of trade bait for that year, and then that happened. I waited too long to trade him, and it's just like any day, man. The like injuries can just happen to these guys. It's
That's
wild.
true. And I mean, honestly, if there was a team who could afford to lose a running back for the year, it was probably the Jags because they have Travis Etienne, they have James Robinson, who was 1,000-yard rusher last year, and they also have Carlos Hyde. So it's not like they don't have talent still on the roster that can carry. So the running back room should still be okay, but they're definitely gonna lose that pass catching ability that Travis Etienne brings to the table. I mean, he just reminds me of Naheem Hines, the pass catching screen back for the Colts. I mean, like the dude can run. Like you run him up the middle, he can run up the middle. But you throw him off to the left on a screen, and that dude can be 80 yards down the field in 10 seconds. So, I mean, it sucks for him. And it sucks, not that this matters, but it sucks for fantasy owners who have done their drafts already who took him. Um, yeah, it's just a sad situation, and you hate to see it too because Trevor and him, they played together in college, so you know that they were both looking forward to being able to play in the NFL together after playing together for years at Clemson, and now Etienne is down with an injury until next season. So it's just a really sad situation. Not that I think the Jags are going to be that great of a team anyways, but this is definitely a big blow to their offense. Luckily, they still have running back depth, but they're just going to lose that extra aspect that Etienne can bring to the field. So definitely sucks. Hoping he heals soon, praying for him. Rip your knee and your foot and your leg and all the injured things. But yeah, big blow for the Jaguars. That really hurts. Of course, I was on Instagram today looking at like all the Jaguars accounts, and they were like, we can't have anything nice. And I'm just like, you're so right. You had 2015, and that was it. And then after that, you were terrible. So
Yeah, they had like 1 year, and then yeah,
AFC
I
Championship, best defense in the league, mediocre offense, but they still made it. I mean, their defense totally carried them that year, undoubtedly. So they're like, we can't have nice things. I'm like, well, you still have Trevor, so let's pray that he doesn't go down with a season-ending injury, because if he did, you're probably going 0-16. Or
big
0-17
yikes.
now, because there's 17 games.
Exactly. Yeah, well, we've got that breaking news today. In other news that happened today, we are recording as of 8/24/21 on a Tuesday. So that's just what has happened. But we also saw, in a not really surprising move, Robby Anderson get signed for two more years by the Panthers. The deal is worth $29.5 million for the next 2 years. So the Panthers will have him all the way through 2023. I don't think this personally really surprises many people. Robby Anderson played very well for them last year. He had over 1,000 yards receiving, and him and Sam Darnold already kind of have that connection from back in New York. So I'm guessing Rule just kind of wanted to be like, hey, we're going to extend this guy. He's a good receiver, and he's shown he can play. So, Chelsea, what do you think of this deal?
I mean, I think number one, this reflects upon the fact that Matt Rule thinks Sam Darnold is the guy for multiple years, which is interesting because we've seen him throw 2 passes in the preseason. He was out there for like a minute 30 and then they pulled him out, right?
And I was there for it. I saw
I know.
Sammy Boy throw the ball for the first time as a Panther. Just as a heads up, I was at the preseason game
Was it a
against
terrible
the
throw?
Ravens. No, the first one was really good. The second one was because nobody was open, so you just chucked it into the stands. But
Gotcha. Hey, 1 of 2, 50%, worse than or better than 0%, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the first thing that comes to my mind, that Matt Rule signed a guy that Sam Darnold is comfortable with because he thinks that Sam Darnold is going to be the guy for presumably the foreseeable future, which, if you know anything about Sam Darnold, he has not looked like the guy for the foreseeable future for any team recently. So we will definitely see. But even if Sam Darnold doesn't end up being the guy for the Panthers, Robby Anderson is really talented. And he had a really good year last year with Teddy Bridgewater, who, hey, no hate or shame to Teddy Bridgewater. Like, he was fine, but like, of all the like, he's not the best quarterback, right? And he still managed to have that amount of yards, that amount of touchdowns, that amount of catches, which is really impressive. And on top of that, he's 28 and he's still putting up 1,000-yard seasons after being stuck, in New York on the Jets for, so many years. So, I mean, I think that this is a good move for the Panthers. He is still pretty young. He's under 30. He gets a lot of yards, he gets a lot of touchdowns. And I don't know, some people think that he's overpaid, but I don't really agree. I mean, if you look at the Panthers wide receiver core, I mean, it's really not that bad. I mean, they have Robby Anderson, they have DJ Moore, they have David Moore, who they got from the Seahawks, and they have that Terrence Marshall kid from LSU who looks honestly better than Jamar Chase looks right now, which I don't think any of us thought that we were going to be saying that because Jamar Chase was the guy. But no, he looks really good. So, I mean, and you got McCaffrey, who, drops 1,000 yards in passing a season. So really, I mean, their position players on offense, they don't look that bad. I mean, you have Chuba Hubbard, the running back out of Oklahoma State that got drafted, who's really good too, who can kind of be a change of pace for when McCaffrey inevitably has to, go breathe on the sideline because he carried the team last year. But I mean,
Not
obviously
last year,
O-line's going to be a
but
question. Well, you know what I mean. Obviously, O-line's going to be a question. Obviously, tight end's kind of a question. I mean, you guys went out and got someone, but he's not really the most proven guy. So, I mean, but receivers and running backs look good. If quarterback is even slightly above average, Panthers offense it's going to be fun. So yeah, I think that this is a good signing for the Panthers. And I think that Robby Anderson's going to continue to perform. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he took over the wide receiver one eventually, like over DJ Moore, because this dude is good. So, I mean, I think it's a good sign.
I guess we'll have to see. I think DJ Moore still is the number one, but yeah, it's really, I would say with the Panthers, they don't live and die by their number one receiver. They kind of just have
Yeah.
two good ones. They throw it to whoever's open. So yeah, I agree with you. I think this is a good signing overall. And I think that Matt Rule is trying to create, they've got good offensive pieces, around them. And I think they've drafted well. They've signed well. They had to lose Curtis Samuel last year, which they didn't necessarily want to, but of the three receivers they were going to lose, it was, I think most people knew it was going to be Curtis Samuel, who's now back with Ron Rivera again over in Washington, which I don't even think
The
is a bad
irony.
signing. Yeah, I know, right? I think Curtis Samuel's a good player, and I can see why Washington wanted him. So we'll have to see, if Sam Darnold can make all these pieces work this year, if they can work better than they did last year, put up more consistent numbers on offense. And yeah, well, it'll be a really interesting year for them. But next we got, well, let's talk about Zack Wilson, really showing out well right now in the preseason, putting up a couple of TDs in the games, in these preseason games. And, not really, you don't get to play that long in the preseason normally. So Chelsea, what do you think? He's playing well so far.
I mean, I think you can pretty obviously tell that he's playing well when he gets a shout out from Aaron Rodgers after the game.
Oh, yeah.
Which, of course, there are those conspiracy theorists that get on Twitter and they're like, you know who he's never told that to? Jordan Love. And it's like, stop. Stop being like this.
Chill out.
Come on, man. But yeah, Wilson, people were questioning him when training camp first started because he looked really bad, right? But, maybe it was just, I'm a rookie and I'm literally 21 years old playing in a professional football league and I'm anxious. I mean, it very well could have been that, but I saw that throw that he made running to the right, throwing across his body like 30 yards down the field to that sideline. That was pretty impressive. I mean, I don't think that there are a lot of seasoned guys in the league who could do that. I mean, I don't really foresee like a Matt Ryan or a Ryan Tannehill, running to his right, throwing across his body. So, I mean, I thought that was pretty impressive. I mean, his stats looked good. Of course, he is still on the Jets, and the Jets have sustained some very major injuries to their team already, losing Carl Lawson, the guy they got from the Bengals for the year, to an Achilles, because just like the Jaguars, the Jets can't have anything nice also. So it'll be interesting to see how he actually performs during the regular season, considering he does play for the Jets and the Jets are very bad. But he looked good in this preseason game. He had a good completion percentage. He had multiple touchdowns. He made some really nice throws. I mean, I think the kid has talent. I don't think that he's the most talented quarterback in this class. I still think that Trevor is. And then I think that Justin Fields is still a little more talented than him. And then I'd put like Zack Wilson and Trey Lance, like, kind of in the same tier of being really good in the league. But no, I mean, from what I saw, he looked good. And, if you're a Jets fan, you're thinking, woohoo, we actually found someone who can do something. So hopefully he lives up to it. You never want to see young guys end up being busts. No one takes joy or pleasure out of that unless you're just one of those fans that does. And in that case, why are you like this? So yeah, I hope he does well. I'd love to see the Jets win some games, take down the Patriots. I would really enjoy that. So go take down the Patriots for me, Zach. Thanks. Signed, a loyal Colts fan.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, looking at Zack Wilson, I think a lot of people definitely feel as if they thought, okay, well, he's going to be a bust, or he's, there's a lot of people high on him. There's a lot of people not so high on him. And I think that what we have to just think about and look at is he going to succeed on the Jets long term? Is this really their guy? If it really is going to be their guy, he's going to have good coaches under him. He's going to have good, they're going to have to build a good football culture up there, because we've seen how many talented quarterbacks have we seen go on bad teams and just go to die. Like
Yep.
we've seen so many, and it's hard to tell whether or not Zack Wilson will be the long-term answer. He can be the start of the foundation, and I do believe that that can happen. But I think the ultimate question is are the Jets going to be able to build a good team around them? I don't believe they were talentless. I mean, last year, look,
Yeah.
they ended up beating some good teams by the end of the year.
I mean, they had Crowder, the receiver, who was good. I mean, they
Mhm.
had some good pieces on their team. It's just the vast majority of their team was just mediocre.
I think it was either mediocre or not coached well. I really think
Yeah.
Adam Gase he wasn't a very good coach. And we've talked
Remember
we
when I
talked
went
about that.
off about him last year? I was like,
Yeah,
Adam Gase is the worst.
I just
Which I say in all love. Shout out to Adam Gase. Hope you're doing good.
we're just talking exclusively football, not personally.
Right.
So I think it's just going to be interesting. The Jets have just been historically bad. Can you change the culture of a historically bad team? I think that's what Cleveland's trying to do right now. They are starting to build a culture that players want to go to. People want to go watch the Browns now. Like, they want to see them on TV. They want to go to the games and all this stuff. So the Browns are starting to build a culture. Are they going to turn it around? That is the question. You can build the culture, but in the end, you're not winning games. Nobody's happy. So I think that will be interesting, and we'll just have to see if the Jets can make this happen. But right now, this is a good sign for them. Now, kind of looking into that, does the preseason really matter? Like, does any of this matter? Like, looking back on all of this. Does
anything matter?
Oh man, that's way too deep for this right now.
Oh my gosh.
But I guess I just look at this and I'm like, the preseason, yet they don't, in my opinion, none of this is going to truly matter, because there are good signs, but it doesn't mean that because Trevor Lawrence hasn't played that well recently, that he's not going to play well in the regular season. It doesn't mean that because Zack Wilson is playing well right now, he's going to play well in the regular season. My dad was telling me a while back, because, watching the preseason game, Panthers versus Ravens, was one of the slowest games I think I've ever seen, where it's not even because my team was losing, but because both teams just felt like it was run the ball, punt, run the ball, punt. And I'm like, okay, can we get something different to happen, please? But I felt like, something my dad was telling me was, a few years ago, the Panthers had the most sacks, like, in the whole preseason. They were dominating the preseason as far as sacks. And everyone said they're going to be really good. Wow, they're going to be so good. Came out, they had I believe one of the worst defenses that year. I cannot remember what year that was, so I apologize for that. If someone can help me find that, or I'll try to look it up later. But looking at that, it was like, okay, they had such a great defense. Regular season came around, they barely had any sacks, and they were not a good defense. So I don't know. I mean, I know this is quarterback, what a lot of people are thinking, but Chelsea, what do you think? Do you think any of this actually matters?
Does anything really matter? No, just kidding. I think it depends. For players that aren't rookies, not really. I mean,
okay,
it's good to get them reps, and it's good to have them get back out there and get warmed up. For people that aren't rookies that may have had injury-plagued years in the league so far, and they're now healthy, yeah, it matters. I mean, look at someone like Paris Campbell on the Colts, right? He got drafted, played a few games, boom, injury, out for the year, right? He heals up, comes back last year, boom, injury, out for the year. And he was really good at Ohio State. I mean, he's a burner. The dude runs like a 4.3. So he has the potential and he has the power to be able to be a really dominant receiver for our team. But the reality is, we just don't know. He's been injured so much that really the only way for us to know is to get him snaps. And if he's been injured for 2 years and he goes off in the preseason and has a nice catch over, a defender, or if he turns on the Jets at the right time, or, whatever it may be, runs a crisp route, anything like that. I think it depends. Like, if you're a seasoned veteran, people know who you are, they know what you are, they know what you can do, they know how talented you are. No, it doesn't really matter unless you've changed some facet of the game. Like, if all of a sudden Tom Brady decided he wanted to run like Lamar Jackson, it would probably matter to see him do that in the preseason just to know that he could. Not that I think he could, but as an example. But for the rookies, yeah, those guys that are fighting for roster spots that aren't guaranteed to them, not the Nick Chubbs and the Aaron Rodgers and the Mike Evanses of the world. Like, those guys, like, yeah, it matters. I mean, it's basically a 2-month long audition for every single team, that because inevitably guys aren't going to make the team they're currently on. So they want to look as good as possible for all of the preseason to ensure that at least someone signs them, right? Because this game is people's livelihoods. Like, if they don't get signed, like, they might like not be able to eat because they might run out of money like in a couple of months if they don't have a job, which, it is sad. And but that's just the reality of what it is. So I really think it depends. But as for performance, I think it also depends. I mean, can you really judge Trevor Lawrence and say he's going to be terrible because his O-line sucks and gives him no more than 2 seconds to stand there before he's running away? I mean, no. Like, we know what Trevor Lawrence is based on his college self. I mean, we don't know what he is in the NFL because he hasn't played an NFL game yet. So, I mean, you can't really make a judgment call on what a guy is going to be when he hasn't even played his first career game. But the Jags O-line, they had 2 starters out last night, and I'm pretty sure 3 in, and it looked like they had none in, which is worrying. And one of the preseason headlines for the Jags that I was listening to today was, do you risk starting Trevor Lawrence on a team this bad? Like, think about that. That's a pretty heavy headline. I mean, you go out, you spend your first overall pick on a guy, and now people are questioning whether you should even start him because your O-line's so bad, you're afraid he's going to get injured and be out for the year. Like, stuff like that matters. So I just think it depends. Depends on the player. Depends on what they've been through. Depends on what they're fighting for. But as for like the seasoned players that have been in league a few years or many years, people know what they are. Like, no. Like, it doesn't matter if Aaron Rodgers throws 2 interceptions in a preseason game. Like, he's the MVP. No one cares, Patrick Mahomes only runs for 12 yards instead of like 35. Like, no one cares. He's Patrick Mahomes. He's already won a Super Bowl. So I think it depends.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, because I do kind of have this mindset that preseason performance doesn't matter a ton, but I can see where the concern comes from. I think it's the third game of the preseason is always the most fun one because that's when the starters play the most, and that's when people, they're not quite try-harding just yet, but they're trying a little bit more. They realize, all right, we got seasons here basically now. I know there's one more preseason game, but we're not even playing in that one. So I think the third preseason game can tell a little bit. And like you said, the fact that the Jaguars offensive line was not looking very good against or for this preseason. What was it? The first play of Trevor Lawrence's career in the preseason was a sack. And it was funny because the play-by-play says has time in the pocket, and immediately gone. Trevor was taken down.
Yeah, sack, fumble. He luckily recovered his own fumble, but
yeah,
way to christen him into the league.
I really think this might be a hard wake-up call for Trevor after having such a dominant team for so long and being literally even above everybody. Yeah, even in high school to college. And I think that's part of the reason why some of these guys that we think, how could they not do so well? They were so good throughout their whole lives. What happens here? The NFL is just a whole different game, but it does not mean he's going to be bad.
Doesn't mean it's the same.
Exactly.
I hear people all the time, whether it be online or at work or whatever it may be, like, oh yeah, like he'll be good. He'll be good in the NFL because he was good in college. It's like, it doesn't work like that. Like, how many guys have we said, oh yeah, they'll be good? They were good in college, and then they get into the NFL and they look like they've never played football before.
Mm-hmm. I believe it was Jamarcus Russell was
Yeah,
listed as a
that's who I was thinking.
generational talent.
Yeah.
Did not
Yeah, I
pan
mean,
out in the NFL.
you got Russell. I mean, look at him. He he didn't pan out, which is terrible and sad, and I wish he would have. But I mean, you got guys all over the league like that have come and gone. I mean, I think you can look at Ohio State quarterbacks. I mean, look at Dwayne Haskins, right? He had a shot to be the starter and he blew it, and now he's trying to fight back to be a starter next year or the year after. But it's like, you're supposed to be really good coming out of college. I mean, I can think of multiple Ohio State quarterbacks specifically that people have been like, oh, yeah, he's going to be good. And then he got to the league and people never heard about him again, which is just terrible. But yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. And I think it happens more than people realize, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And this is not to say Trevor will end up that way.
Right.
I don't think he will. I think he's shown glimpses where it's like, okay, this guy can play. And just because Zack Wilson is playing well right now, it doesn't mean that he's not going to be getting hit a lot up
Right.
in New York too. So we're going to see, we definitely see how long can these QBs last throughout a whole NFL season. As the season goes on, are they going to be worn down, or are they going to keep on playing better? And I think that'll be a very interesting question that we will see the answer to, at least somewhat this year.
Durability is definitely something that you really learn a lot about a rookie based on their durability. Did you see that run that Trevor had last night where he literally dove head first into a pile of 4 defenders? And I'm like, dude, I don't need you out here running like Andrew Luck. Please don't retire early. Yesterday was the anniversary, or today, one of the days, of Andrew Luck retiring. I do not need Trevor Lawrence running around like a maniac and then getting hit horribly and never being the same. Like, can you just slide with your feet? Like, I know I've never played football and I know it's probably harder than it sounds in my head, but just why would you dive first with your head? It doesn't make sense to me. Just dive with your feet, man. This is your second preseason game ever. Don't dive head first into 4 seasoned NFL players who are all trying to tackle you. It's just, let's not do that again. That happened. I looked at my dad. I was like, uh-oh. He was like, you better not do that again. I'm like, I know. He better not.
Every Jags fan had an actual heart attack at that moment.
I'm not even a Jags fan, and I had a heart attack. I was sitting there. I was like, Trevor, are you okay? And then he got up. I was like, oh, he's fine. But then my second thought was never do that again.
Yeah, he probably got it from the coaches. He went back to that sideline, and they probably were like, dude, what are you doing?
They were like, son, don't do that again.
That's great. Well, I think that's pretty much all the topics we got for this week. So, Chelsea, do you want to do our outro for us?
Sure. So thanks for listening, guys. Tune back in next Wednesday for a new podcast episode. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at _LC football _ and on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Launch Codes Football. I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll see you next week.
See you guys.
See ya.